Hi, I'm Julia Smith and we're here at my farm, Blue Sky Ranch in the Nicola Valley. We're really dealing with some tough challenges with drought and heat domes and forest fires, and so I wanted to invite you all here to see what I'm dealing with, and I think maybe that there's a lot of other people out there dealing with the same things. So here's a video about adapting to climate change and making tough choices and trying to build up our land to be more resilient and to be able to better handle the things that Mother Nature is throwing at us in a way that is in line with our values and the way we want to raise our animals, the way we want to operate within our community, and the relationship that we want to have with our land. So keeping a healthy pasture in the face of all of these challenges that we're facing now, it involves the principles of rotational grazing, which are having the right species for your pasture, moving them frequently, and allowing the pasture enough time to rest and recover in between moves. So we've found that pigs are not the right species for our pasture. Cows are not the right species for our pasture because we don't have enough land for the cows, but sheep seem to be a good fit for our size of operation and for the plant species that we have. So I'm transitioning to sheep. I'm excited about that. It's been really fun working with the sheep for the last couple of years. They're a way better fit for the land. They're also easier to move around. They're much easier on the pasture. They're actually a benefit to the pasture. But yeah, the lambs are really good at weed control in the pasture, and they're just going around and fertilizing as they go. And they don't have the same impact that the pigs had. They're not rooting and digging giant holes and making a mess and killing trees. And they're just a kinder, gentler solution for land restoration. I haven't been using the sheep here very long. We just started with sheep last year, but I'm already seeing a difference in our pasture quality. It looks way better than I thought it would with the amount of rain that we've had this year. The sheep seem to have done the best work for this pasture that I've seen so far. So I just hope it's going to keep improving in spite of everything that Mother Nature's throwing at us. A lot of people who are just starting out with rotational grazing want to know, how often do I have to move my animals? What size should my paddocks be? And the answer is, it depends. It isn't a formula, and what I'm doing here won't necessarily work for you. It's a moving target. It depends on so many things. It depends on your climate. It depends on your weather. It depends on the species that you're using. It depends on the species that you have in your fields. So it depends on your stocking rate. There's so many variables, so you can't just tell someone, set up your paddocks this size and move them every 2 days. You have to watch what your animals are doing. You have to watch what your plant species are doing. You have to watch what your weather is doing. Just being out there every day, keeping an eye on things, you get a feel for it pretty quickly. Like, oh, I don't know if there's enough in here to last until tomorrow morning. I better move them tonight. So it seems a little overwhelming at first, but you really do get a feel for it if you spend enough time out there. So what we have going on here is a multi-species intensive rotational grazing plan. So we've been moving the animals around the pasture. They get moved pretty much every day. It just kind of depends on how much they've eaten. So we started over here the first day, and you can see that is already recovering nicely in spite of not having enough rain, so that's good to see. So hope we'll be able to get another rotation through here, which is great. We weren't able to get 2 rotations last year. So we started there, and then we moved down this fence line to the end. So you can see it's less recovered as you go down. And then we turned and started on this next row. And so now we're coming back this way. So the sheep go first, and they've been really good at pounding down the weeds particularly, and a few of the grass species, but there's quite a bit of grass that they don't seem to prefer. So rather than leaving them in and forcing them to eat it, I decided to introduce the horses into the rotation, and this is working really well because they don't want to eat the weeds, they want to eat the grass. So you see the horses come in behind the sheep, and the sheep are in here now, and tomorrow we'll move them up one, and then the horses will move into where the sheep are. We have a real diversity of plant species in this pasture, which is kind of cool. We find that the sheep seem to like the brome, but are less keen on the fescue, and so that's how having the horses in the mix is helpful. The kind of gold standard that we're aiming for in our pasture is the native bunch grasses. Sometimes they get out-competed, but any ground cover is better than no ground cover. So I've kind of tried to change my relationship with these weeds a little bit and embrace the ground cover. You know, at least they're providing a service. Nature decided that, you know, if grass wasn't going to grow there, let's put something there. So the great thing about the sheep being so into the weeds is it knocks those weeds back and it gives the grasses a chance to compete. So it gives them a little bit of an edge, and that's what we're trying to do here by hammering the weeds. And yeah, then we crop the grasses, and when the horses take the grasses down, the roots slough off, and that's building soil. And we don't want to take it so far down that there's not enough root for the plant to regrow. So that's why we do the frequent moves. So yeah, we try and stop the weeds from going to seed, knock them back. So, you know, we take all their solar panels off, and it also gives like more physical space for the grasses. Then the grasses can get more of the sunlight, more of the limited moisture that we have available, and then give it a nice long rest to regrow. And so the plant comes back nice and strong. The idea being that the grasses will start to take up more and more space as we go along, and the weeds will diminish. So there's a lot of bare patches in this paddock. You don't notice them so much when there's lots of grass, but after all of the grass and weeds get eaten down, it leaves a lot of these bare patches exposed. And so what I'm trying to do is cover it as much as I can. So you can see here, this was worse than here. So when I cleaned out the hut, I put all of the litter down on the bare patches here. And this will help to hold the moisture in. You can, like this soil here, still has moisture in it, where it's been covered, versus this, which is just like dust, right? So it's a pretty big difference. Like you see that holds a shape versus. So last year we ran out of forage earlier than I would have liked. My plan this year, when we do run out of forage, is I'm going to start bale grazing. Traditionally, bale grazing is a technique that's used in the winter, where you set out a number of bales in a field and you move the cattle to the bales. So you move around your field. It's like rotational grazing, only they're not grazing, they're eating the hay. This allows you to keep your nutrients cycling on your field and to take advantage of any waste, because that gets cycled back into your soil. And I've heard that any waste that you have, the residue from the hay that the cows don't eat or the sheep, you get that back in multiples in your soil health. So I'm going to try doing this in the summer or the fall when we run out of forage here. So I will put the hay out and continue to move the sheep around the property to the hay, and that hay the residue will stay on the ground, increasing the litter, and it'll allow me to keep the nutrients from the sheep manure traveling around the pasture. The sheep are working well for us because we have a lot of weeds, plants that are not in the right place that are considered weeds, and they like them, so that's been good for us. One of the principles of regenerative agriculture is not disturbing the soil. And what happens when you disturb the soil often is you get weeds. If you've got bare patches and just adverse conditions like drought and heat, There's a lot of these species that are just able to outcompete the native grasses and more desirable plants. And so that's some of the situation that we're having here. So you can see in this field, for example, we've got some geranium and some lupin. We've got yarrow over here. As far as weeds go, that one's not so bad. This is a weed that we have quite a bit of. It's salsify. It turns into a beautiful yellow flower and then a big giant puffball like a dandelion. But this one's not so bad because everybody loves it. So we're in the field that the sheep were in yesterday. And then if you look at the rest of the pasture, you can see that they've eaten down all the weeds. I can barely see a single weed left in this pasture. So when we compare that to where they are today, you can see how much work they're really getting done. And so now we just have the horses in behind them finishing up the grasses that the sheep didn't want to eat. So there are so many fencing options available now. There's some really great technology available that makes this relatively easy. Choosing the right kind of fence for your species is important. So you can see here with the sheep, I have them on a 4-strand smart fence. This is relatively easy to move around. It's on a reel, which you just crank in to roll it up and you just pull it to roll it out. And then you can see with the horses, it's much less infrastructure. I'm just using these ring top posts and one line of poly wire, which is on this reel. And so I can just wind that up and wind it out. Obviously you need to have water, you need to have mineral, salt, and some kind of shelter. You don't necessarily need something as fancy as this. This is on wheels, this is a trailer, and so they can go in there if there's bad storm. They don't very often. Mostly this gets used for shade. So we keep the ATV hooked up to it because we move it every day. And yeah, we just open up the fence and just roll it into the next paddock when it's time to move. By staying engaged and adaptable, rotational grazing becomes more than just a management tool. It's a way to amplify the land's natural regenerative processes. By following key principles like matching stocking rates to forage availability, allowing for proper recovery periods, and maintaining soil cover, you're setting your farm up for long-term resilience in the face of climate challenges.